let's take a look at what I call our own selfie view. Yes, we all have an image of ourselves, and it's pretty important that we know what it's all about. We need to know our self beliefs, how we evaluate ourselves. We need to compare our situation as to our current or our perceived self, who we think that we are, to the desired self or the ideal self. We all have an opportunity to be that person, that ideal self, but we have to pay attention to where we currently are. And that's why I mentioned in a previous chapter so much about the idea of self-testing. There's three levels of self-concept: the individual, the relation to other people, and then the overall image that we have of our self-concept as to who we are and how we fit. Here's an interesting chart. Look at the different aspects in the middle of the self-complex: our complexity, our consistency, and our clarity. We talked a little bit about this when we looked on the four temperaments in that chart with the level of extroversion, introversion, and also the level of neurosis or stability of our emotions. So we look on that aspect of it and pay attention to the different things about the social self, the self-enhancement as we go through. So look at, first of all, on the complexity. The number of distinct important identities people perceive about themselves. How complex are we? A lot of times we have multiple self-concepts. I was in a training program with mediators, and so we're going through looking at the different aspects of it, and I found it really puzzling. I did the survey on 3 different groups going through this training with these different aspects, and I found something new. People had one image they projected in the workplace, and then they had a different image altogether they projected when with their family. Pretty much about 68 to 72%, depending upon the group. And it wasn't a scientific survey. We only really did about 3 groups, and it was pretty much informal, but about 2/3 of them generally, they had a different aspect of things they showed themselves in the workplace and what they showed to their family. For the most part, the differences relied on the aspect of, at work, I have to perform this way to fulfill the expectations. When I'm home with my family, it doesn't matter who I am, they have to accept me for who I am. What's an interesting thought? They were this face in the workplace when others are observing them, and they could be terminated or viewed inappropriately, but at home, they can be just who I want to be. It's interesting, that complexity. We have multiple self-concepts. The higher the complexity, when our selves are separate, it becomes more difficult. So on consistency, our multiple selves require similar personality attributes. Our self-views are compatible with the person's actual attributes. So being true to yourself is much better when you're consistent about it generally, but sometimes you have to put on the identity of what you're at and what you want to do. The clarity, the self-concepts: clear, confidently defined, and stable. Clarity increases with age and high consistency. Be the same person you are Monday as you are on Tuesday. Now, by the way, I got to tell you, one of the most interesting parts about having worked in human resources versus working in the business office, in the business office, 2 + 2 is always 4. And it's that way on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. On human resources, the person you see on Monday may be a different person on Tuesday and totally different person on Wednesday. There are no consistent variables. But you find as people get older, they accept themselves for who they are. Now, that being said, I've seen people in their 40s and 50s who still have a problem with their own personal self-image. So unless you resolve this aspect of your personality, you'll always struggle with it. That's why I recommend studying yourself very clearly to know exactly who you are. People have better well-being with multiple selves, the complexity of it, a higher consistency, and the clarity aspect of being well-established selves. I encourage you to go think about the aspect of who you are in the different situations. Are you different in the social setting versus different with your family setting, and different in your work setting, different in your religious area if you have that in your life? So all the different aspects, how are you there? Are you the same consistent person when we talk about that? The self-complex on the high end, the complexity, they're more adaptive. They'll be able to have more diverse networks, but it becomes more stressful because they're trying to sometimes put forward a persona that they don't really have. But the low complexity, they're really, the resources develop fewer identities, the better off you are. And the self-concept of clarity, High, better performance. If you're clear about who you are, the leadership, if you're being clear as to what you are, what you're explaining, what your value system are, it helps your career development, and you're less threatened by conflict because you're getting rid of the baggage that comes by being multiple selves with different aspects you're trying to project. On the very high, the role and flexibility sometimes works in a negative fashion as well. So drive to promote and protect your positive self-view. Even though positive psychology has an awful lot of faults, one of the big strengths it has, it gives you that aspect of being positive as to who you are as an individual, but you have to learn who you are by testing. Looking at empirical evidence helps you, because sometimes our rose-colored glasses that we're born with and then we develop through our value imprinting, sometimes we look at ourselves and we listen to our mom all the time and all our friends say, oh, you're so wonderful. You have to understand you have flaws, and even your greatest strength can be your weakness. It's very evident and common and important situation. The self-enhancement outcomes, the better mental and physical health you are, and the higher motivation due to can-do beliefs. Keep it positive if you have a self-talk jargon, and all of us do, just some of us are all more aware than other people are, but can do, I can do this, I can overcome this. And if you, in the problems in which you face a riskier decision, sometimes you need to confront it and embrace it instead of running from it. Sometimes you can have a personal causation, and sometimes we're slower to recognize mistakes. The self-verification, this area stabilizes our self-concept. Here's our self-concept, and here we're verifying it. We communicate that self-concepts to others, and then we seek confirming feedback as to who we think we are. Here you are over here, you show yourself as to who you are to these people with your values, your beliefs, your ideals, and you're getting confirmation of it. And the self-verification, that whole aspect, as soon as you get verification, the outcome, it affects our perceptions and also tends to dismiss the contrary to our self-concept. Self-esteem, that's a big thing. We'll talk later on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but really this is about organizational behavior, not personal psychology, but it's the extent to which people like, respect, and are satisfied with themselves. If you're at that level in the Maslow hierarchy of needs, okay, that'll help you in the aspect of identifying who you are and confident that you have an opportunity to serve the organization well when you find your place there. The higher your self-esteem, the less you're influenced by others, and the more confident and the more you do your role as a leader. Self-efficacy, okay, the belief you can do a successful task based upon your Mars factors. Pay attention to your knowledge, skills, and ability, work on them on a regular basis, and have a locus control where you have a general belief that you have control over your life. That'll help you have a higher self-evaluation. Now, opposing motives. Okay, need to be distinctive, have your own identity, don't always rubber stamp everything, but pay attention. Need to be inclusive with others, that's your social identity. And a lot of times we identify our groups. Now, with that said, I did a series of workshops over the years on getting jobs. And one of my colleagues, whenever I had her presenting with me, there were usually 2 or 3 of us presenting on it. And we had every year for about 8 years, we would be on the road with this. And so we would talk about the aspect of who you are, and people, when you put your resume out there, people want to know what group of people you associate yourselves with, because the higher the level, the higher the perception of the people reading your resume are. We do define ourselves by the groups that we have. I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. I've been on numerous boards, and sometimes you want to drop the name of the board that you're on to sit down and help give you more practical application to that moment. So pay attention to your self-view, your own perception as to who you're seeing yourself, your current versus your desired. Look on the 3 aspects of your self-concept: the complexity, the consistency that you have, and the clarity and the self-esteem. And look at the extent that people like and respect themselves. You need to do that about yourself. Part of that is the positive, part of it's the negative, but look in that, and if it's the negative part, work on making that different than it was before. That high self-esteem, be less influenced by others, more persistent, more logical. Go back to the Mars factors again. I know that this is a class, okay, and it's pain to go back to a previous chapter. Go pay attention to what Mars stands for and how those things can sit down and help you in your own self-view. And of all things, have that can-do belief across all situations, that you can conquer things, you can obtain them, you can do the impossible that others fail because of who you are. Have that positivity within. Your own selfie view. Take care.